And Ari Berman on the line with us with Rolling Stone. He is a contributor to Rolling Stone magazine, the political correspondent for The Nation magazine as well, and the author of Herding Donkeys. But his most recent piece in Rolling Stone, rollingstone.com, The GOP War on Voting, is particularly fascinating. Ari, welcome to the program.
Hey, Tom. Thanks for having me back.
Great to have you with us. The story that many Americans have been hearing for some years now, mostly out of Fox News, but largely echoing through the whole media sphere, is that there has been enormous voting fraud going on, that illegal immigrants, in particular Hispanics, are showing up in large numbers at the polls to vote, that poor people are voting 2, 3, 5, 10, 12 times, dead people are showing up to vote, that this is a crisis of biblical proportions in the United States that threatens democracy itself, that there was this giant criminal conspiracy around it run largely by African Americans called ACORN, and that it has finally successfully been excised, this cancer, from our body politic, but we have to take the next step to prevent any of this kind of horror from ever happening again. Have I characterized the narrative, the setup narrative accurately?
Yeah, that's basically the setup narrative, which, of course, as I'm sure we'll talk about, is a total lie. The fact is that Republicans have been talking about this boogeyman of voter fraud for a while, and it intensified after the election of Barack Obama, which many conservatives viewed as stolen by ACORN, and that laid the groundwork for this unprecedented push to rewrite the nation's election laws in advance of the 2012 election, and really tried to suppress a number of Democratic-leaning voters, the very voters that gave Barack Obama his majority in 2008, from voting again for Obama in 2012. And the thing about vote fraud is in-person voter impersonation, which is what these laws are designed to crack down on, doesn't really exist. There is a great study by the Brennan Center that found that a voter is more likely to be hit by lightning than they are to impersonate another voter.
Well, in fact, I understand that about 700 people a year in America are hit by lightning, and about 20 people a year in America are actually charged with voting illegally.
And the Justice Department during the Bush administration made prosecuting voter fraud a top priority. And between 2002 and 2007, when 300 million people voted, they prosecuted only 86 cases of voter fraud. And most of those were cases where people didn't even realize they were ineligible to vote. And so it wasn't even part of any sort of conspiracy, even those few 86 instances they found. So this is really an incredibly draconian solution to a problem that doesn't exist.
Right. More people die from, drinking too much water or something. I mean, that's not the right example. But, being struck by lightning is certainly a good one. And so the Republicans have sold this idea of, I think, quite successfully to their own base, and even with some success to people who are politically naive or not particularly well informed. And they're using that sales job now to pass laws to protect us from these horrors of 20 people a year voting when they're ineligible to. They're not in the right state, or they're not a resident, or they were a felon and they didn't know that they couldn't vote when they were a felon, or whatever it may be. Or people like Ann Coulter, who registered to vote at her agent's house because she didn't want her own home address to be a matter of public record. Or maybe Mitt Romney, who is registered to vote in his son's unfinished basement in Massachusetts, but lives in a mansion in California. To the best of my knowledge, neither of those have been prosecuted for voter fraud. But in any case, now the Republicans are offering us a solution.
Well, these 20 cases of voter fraud, as you mentioned, have really justified a crackdown and a wholesale rewriting of the election laws that could prevent millions of people from voting. And they're doing that by making it harder to register to vote, making it harder for groups to register people to vote, cutting back on early voting, requiring these photo IDs that 10% of U.S. citizens, including 18% of young people and 25% of African Americans, don't have, writing the laws so that people who have IDs, for example, students and African Americans, won't be able to vote because the IDs they have are considered ineligible. States like Texas saying you can't have a student ID, but you can have a gun permit, and then preventing ex-felons who have served their time from voting in states like Florida and Iowa, just instantly disenfranchising hundreds of thousands of voters. So you have this situation where it all adds up. These seemingly disconnected measures all add up to this really sweeping attempt to rig the electorate for the 2012 election. And E.J. Dionne wrote a while back in a Washington Post column, if this were happening in a quote-unquote emerging democracy, we would condemn it as election rigging. But that's exactly what's going on here right now since the 2010 election by the GOP.
Well, keep in mind, Ari, this is the country where a presidential election was decided in the state of the brother of the guy running for president in 2000 on the Supreme Court, where there were members by the Supreme Court who had several members whose family members were working for directly or peripherally the campaign of the guy that won. I mean, it's not like we haven't had third world politics for some time in this country.
And that's what I say in the article, that it's incredibly ironic that the party that won the 2000 election, despite having lost the popular vote, is now on this rampage about voter fraud. Because if anyone won an election illegitimately, it was George W. Bush in 2000, not Barack Obama in 2008.
But that's the point. I mean, Katherine Harris successfully knocked 60 to 80,000 African Americans off the voter polls, off the eligibility polls in Florida, by claiming that they were felons when in fact they weren't. They just had names that were similar to Texas felons, common African American names, and that worked. I mean, that got them within the margin of error, where if they could stop the actual statewide count, they could declare George Bush the winner, which they did, and basically steal the election. So now, rather than knocking 80,000 off, let's knock 180,000 off, so there won't even be any question.
Yeah, absolutely. And these changes are happening in battleground states like Ohio, like Florida, like Wisconsin, that are going to be very close in 2012, and everyone knows it. And what Republicans are trying to ensure is basically to secure their own reelection before anyone's voted. So it doesn't matter if the economy improves. It doesn't matter if Barack Obama does better in the polls. It doesn't matter if it's Michelle Bachmann, Rick Perry, or Mitt Romney. They want this electorate in place. And Bill Clinton has said this is not rocket science. They want the 2012 election to look more like 2010 than 2008. And they're writing the rules in such a way to ensure that that's the electorate that turns out.
Yeah, between that and redistricting, it's the old Joe Stalin. I don't care how people vote; I just care who counts the votes.
And that's why this is distressing for me for a small d Democratic reason. I mean, you don't have to be a Republican, you don't have to be a Democrat. The fact that we're making it so much more difficult for people to vote is what's really
Ari, we have 30 seconds left. What can people do about this, Ari Berman?
Sure. Well, they first have to get educated, go to Rock the Vote, go to the Brennan Center, go to all the League of Women Voters, all those different groups that are doing this work, find out whether they have the right ID, find out what it takes to get the right ID. You first have to be aware of this issue before you can do anything about it, and that's one of the reasons we wrote this article now, to try to get it out there, but before people realize that they can't vote in the next election.
Because there's going to be a whole lot of people who are going to show up in November 2012 and be sent away, basically,
and hopefully that
or be given placebo ballots.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully that doesn't happen because people will be aware of it beforehand and can actually do something proactive.
Right. What about the Justice Department striking this stuff down as an extension of the Jim Crow laws?
They could do that. The Justice Department has to review all the states that are under the purview of the Voting Rights Act. They're in the process of doing that right now. They haven't been too aggressive recently, but there are signs that they're looking at this stuff very closely. So that's another recourse for people. And there's going to be a number of lawsuits in states like Missouri, Florida, Wisconsin, etc. So this stuff's still moving through the courts as well.
Great. Ari Berman. You can read all about it over at rollingstone.com. The GOP War on Voting. In a campaign supported by the Koch brothers, Republicans working to prevent millions of Democrats from voting next year. Thanks, Ari.
Thanks, Tom.